Now, it has been a month since Hamas unleashed its coordinated attack on Israel, which triggered the conflict that we're now seeing in Gaza. And joining us in studio is Israel's ambassador to Canada, Iddo Moed. Ambassador, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, I wanted to begin with what we heard from the Prime Minister today, which we played for people at home. The comments he made about this rising incidence of hate, among them anti-Semitic attacks against the Jewish community in this country. What do you make of the Prime Minister taking the time today to specifically address that?
I think what he's referring to is indeed what we all see is a rise in the number and the seriousness of anti-Semitic attacks against Jews, against Jewish institutions, and so on. And I think the rise in hate and hate-related crimes is worrying for everyone, everywhere around the world, not just here in Canada, also elsewhere. So it's very important, I think, that the Prime Minister draws a line and you know, ring on the bell for everybody to be aware that this is a very serious issue. What we see is the result of this atrocious attack that took place in the Gaza Strip, that there is a sort of a rise of anti-Israel and anti-Jewish sentiment that is really hard to fathom where it comes from, but we see it on the streets. So it's a swastika that was carried in front of Parliament Hill on this weekend, during the weekend, Molotov cocktail being thrown at the synagogue, death threat calls and things of the like. It's very dangerous. We have to be very careful about that. We have to understand that we have to eradicate not just Hamas infrastructure in the Gaza Strip, but also those of us who feel that hate and incitement for violence is a tool to achieve any kind of a goal. We don't accept that as a society, and I think it's very commendable that the Prime Minister referred to that.
Now, yesterday you did put out a release. You acknowledged the fact that it's been some 30 days since Hamas did the attack on Israel. And in your statement, you say, in the Jewish tradition, after a 30-day mourning period, we restart our routine and return to where we left off. However, given the extent of the Hamas atrocities, there is no returning to normal. Can you expand on that?
I would like to share with you and the viewers this image. Here we have 240 hostages that are being held in the Gaza Strip. Children, elderly people, sick people, pregnant women. All of these people have witnessed a massacre in front of their eyes. They cannot forget, even if more than 30 days already passed, and we cannot forget. We cannot forget them. They have to get their liberty back immediately and unconditionally. And we also have to remember that according to Jewish tradition, when people die, we have to bring them to burial as soon as possible, but we have not completed the identification of the bodies yet, because some of them were damaged to such an extent that we don't even know who is who. So we cannot go back to normal. Not in terms of our Jewish belief and not in terms of our security in Israel. What we've undergone is this barbaric attack that reminded us of the Holocaust, of the fact that the Jewish people have to make sure that in our nation country we keep ourselves safe. How do we do that? First of all, we take Hamas out of the equation completely and entirely. Then we'll have to think how we internally arrange our security, but we also think about the day after, about how do we continue to live with our neighbors. We don't have a conflict with our neighbors. We have a conflict with Hamas terrorist organization. And so after following the Abraham Accords, we continue our dialogue also with other Arab countries as we speak to address the Palestinian issue in a way that will make sure that we live side by side in one day in peace. But at the same time, there will be no room for terrorist organizations such as the Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and that other players in the region, such as Iran and the Iran proxies like Hezbollah, will not inflict more damage on Israel and Israeli society. And we have to remember that in Israel we have a lot of non-Jews who are also part of society, who also believe in Israel as their homeland. And so in our effort to preserve and build peace in the region, we want to make sure that all parts of society are part of that. And this is what we are striving for, but at this moment, first and foremost, we have to take care of our security.
Mm-hmm. But as you say that, destroying Hamas infrastructure, getting rid of what Israel sees as a threat to its existence, there are now, as you know, human rights groups pointing to the thousands of lives lost, estimated to be more than 10,000 Palestinian lives lost in Gaza, among them some 3,000 children. There are now calls for the International Criminal Court to investigate the actions that are taking place in Gaza right now. How do you respond to that criticism when people hear your argument against Hamas, but are also looking at the human toll, saying that this is too much?
Israel abides by international law, and specifically by the law of armed conflict. I think that many people who use this argument are not fully aware what it means, what it actually entails. So the issue of proportionality and the distinction that you have to make between combatants and non-combatants, people don't really understand how the reality, what it looks like. So let's take, for example, Hamas not being dressed in uniforms. Let's take the fact that they hide themselves among the most densely population areas, underneath hospitals, within mosques and schools, and shoot from those areas. The fact that the numbers that they bring out, and the Hamas-run so-called Ministry of Health published numbers which are wrong, entirely inflated, then we know that Hamas's aim is to create an image of Israel doing something that it is not doing. We mourn the suffering. We don't want to have to inflict any harm on anybody around us. Until October the 6th, Israel was working very hard to promise a better future for Palestinians also in the Gaza Strip by allowing some 20,000 people to come to work in Israel. Now we know that among those 20,000 people were also terrorists who came to learn what Israel looks like, how the kibbutzim look like from the inside, and they provided that intelligence to the Hamas. So the issue is really, how do we deal with a neighbor that also houses a monster like Hamas? The Palestinian people are our neighbor. We want to live in peace with them. They have among them a monster, a very dangerous one, that actually booby-trapped the whole of the Gaza Strip. And that's very dangerous. So we have to defuse this bomb, to dismantle this bomb completely, and to move this reign of terror out of the Gaza Strip. Then we'll find a way also to rebuild also our part, and hopefully also the Palestinian side. They have to do it together. But we abide by the international law entirely and completely. There is a lot of transparency. And I think when we speak about that, we have to understand exactly what it entails and how it is applied. And Israel invites anybody to understand that, and we can go further into detail in that if you want, but we are very open and transparent about that.
But to my understanding, you have basically said that the people cannot enter Gaza to observe, amongst them the United Nations.
We are not preventing anybody from observing within Gaza Strip. Whoever calls the shots there is the Hamas. It's not us. So what we are trying to monitor is the entry of assistance into the Gaza Strip, because also according to international law, Israel is obliged to facilitate that as long as it is not providing our enemy support in their battle against us. We have reason to believe that Hamas steals parts of that assistance for its own use, and therefore we are very careful in monitoring it. We are, as you may know, we've allowed some 800 trucks already to move into the Gaza Strip. We provide water for the southern part of the Gaza Strip as much as we can, and as much as that infrastructure was not damaged by Hamas itself. So we are trying to provide for this movement also of exit of people out of Gaza Strip as much as we can within the constraints of this war against Hamas.
I'm quickly running out of time, but I do need to ask you, because the Prime Minister of this country continues to call for a humanitarian pause, perhaps to release hostages, to get aid to people in Gaza. What is your response to that call?
We're trying to create the conditions for this to happen, for the exit of people from the Gaza Strip, as many as possible, and for the entry of assistance. You may have seen the images yesterday of Israeli tanks that actually created a humanitarian corridor for people from the northern part of the Gaza Strip to go to the southern part, because they were shot at by Hamas. So actually Israeli soldiers risked their lives to protect Palestinians to move to safer areas. We are very much aware of the needs, the humanitarian needs of the people in the Gaza Strip, and we'll try to do as much as we can to protect those who are not involved and target only those who are responsible for the terrorist attacks.
Ambassador, I regret to say that we're out of time, but I do appreciate the time today. Thank you for that.
Thank you.